Chapter 21. The Colorless Assassin. Jai was able to replicate one of my commands without having to ever see it executed. No, it is more nuanced than this. She was not aware such a command existed until she touched my forehead. How could she? Commands are individually tailored to and by each wolf in accordance to their umatic nature. There are similarities among them, but no two commands are exactly alike. Her sample ability must give her just that, a sample of one of her subject's commands. Once she came into contact with my skin, she was able to sift through my arsenal. A petrifying and equally impressive technique.
It is one and done.
Jai speaks, still patting me. What is? I respond through the grogginess of my awakening. She signals for me to stand as she lifts herself up.
Go on. I released my command. No need to remain obedient beyond the fetters of my eroded spell.
I rise, now looking down at her. Saba remains motionless, silently sitting without so much as budging or turning an eye. She is not allowed for any slack on his leash.
It is one and done, my sample command. I choose an ability from the target and pit it against them, and I can only do thus once per adversary until the next morn. Though, let it be known that I rarely miss.
Jai grins and winks pridefully.
I cannot use another wolf's command twice in the same day,
she reiterates. She is so small, yet so fierce. I recall once when Yindra referred to his former master as the Colorless Assassin, she whose commands have no detectable form. A truly versatile skill, I nod.
Your own channels are beginning to adapt to their new surroundings. Can you feel this?
She asks, glaring straight up at me with one brow perked, now that our vertical statures are to be considered. I shut my eyes and search. Nothing. I cannot feel any worthwhile changes. My channels may have dilated slightly, but this, perhaps, is a wishful concoction of my own mind. No, I reply with my eyes still shut.
You are too attached to your own Does Irma never lend you some of hers? She is plentiful and gracious, even charitable, but it is as though you neglect her gifts. My child, this is the very reason as to why you did not notice that the Kath's and your own were battling for dominance. This forest has been around for many millennia. It has seen ages of ice and of fire as well, but its defensible position and rooted secrets have preserved it. The Kath's collective wisdom can drastically distort the senses and time perception of even the most capable of wolves. Refusing to allow Irma to properly arm you will mean more implications like this in dangerous zones where neither the Omani nor the Tamas have adequate knowledge to explore.
Jai's tone grows stern and somber. What a polarizing individual she is. What is she implying by Oma's gifts? The Mother Well supplied me with my body and soul. Is this not the greatest charity Oma can offer? Jai continues, whilst I inwardly debate and consult with myself. However, I lend my focus promptly after she begins again, as I was rightly taught to do when in the presence of my elders. I'd be handing my head on a platter to her ought she catch me amidst my own thinking whilst she speaks to me.
N, I ask that you sit once more and muster what concentration you may, and funnel it into one focal point. Then, once it is firmly gathered, let it dissipate and defragment itself, but do not lose sight of a single piece of it. Do you understand? First, in a singular focus, then an expansive awareness.
She pauses for a moment and looks around, peacefully taking in her serene and familiar environment. She allows the tenseness around her to loosen and escape, smiling at its departure. Yindra's teacher brings her index finger up, as though to gesture the proving of a point, then continues her lecture. She leads by some variety of an example that I cannot perceive, yet I dare not interrupt her again to inquire further.
Meditate on this. No thinking. Only breathe, contraction, then expansion. True silence. You may not leave from whence you are seated until you've received Oma's gifts. I shall not anchor nor hinder you by my obedience command. If you move, or simply cannot succeed, then I will rightly and justly refuse to make you my student, regardless of my former pupil's recommendation.
She summons her attention to Saba and addresses him by his name.
Saba, I will train you as well. Although, since you cannot apply we will condition you to better combat it. You have no say in the matter. However, if N cannot complete his assigned task, then I will disregard the both of you as potential disciples.
There is no sway in her countenance. She means what she says. Her words properly represent her intent, an occurrence of rarity in any language. So it is salient and distinguished, obvious and not to be mistaken when a sentient being exhibits such a quality. Saba does not afford her a response. Or rather, he cannot. His muzzled silence, whether a no or a yes, is a yes, even a yes master. Oh, how the proud have been humbled. With my vision gently arrested behind unparted lids, I listen as Jai abandons our company. I begin immediately. Time drifts farther and farther from me. Each wave that carries it away momentarily swoons it back towards me. 2 tumbles away, 1 tumble near. As the distance matures, the difficulty in differentiating a single ripple from the swelling waters increases. Before soon, I am amidst a racing sea, churning and parting time from self. The astral plane within the Kath is just as strange as the physical. My relationship with what can be considered duration has both solidified and vaporized, in the sense that whensoever I feel as though I may understand time, it expands in its scope and thus requires further investigation. 1 focal point. 1 focal point. 1 focal. I can force the flow of my to accumulate in the center of my belly, gathering and circling, but I cannot contain it there long enough. It's much too rigorous in this place. The enlarging of my channels allows for too much of my to pour into the center at any one point, leading to an overflow and spill. How is this adaptation? I am thinking too much. I ought trust Yindra's master. If only her instructions were more concise. 1 focal point. Damn! I almost had it. I can do this. It does not matter how long it takes. Time is not of the essence in the Kath. I see that now. It ought to astonish me, but this sort of phenomenon has grown bland to me ever since I left home. Be it from the Frutora, the illusions of the Zythori, the artifacts, Hakor's realm, the Kath, or even derivative of my own perception, it is a fickle thing, isn't it? For the laws of time to be affected by such trivial mechanics and permeable settings is another testament to the possibility of anything, including my dreams. Perhaps I am not meant to understand it. Rather, may it be that I simply must observe it. 1 focal point. Initially, the absolute silence haunts me, creeping and hiding by the wayside. But this is not true silence, is it? It is yet to greet me. There is still chatter from the frightened mind, present and keeping the silence at bay, like vermin awaiting for the deserting of scraps. So long as I may hear these thoughts, silence is absent in the nearest vicinity. Linger without these internal words for long enough and eventually the fear succumbs. Then true silence is experienced. It is no longer restrained by the web of consciousness. It is brought to the forefront, demanding my unyielding, unwavering attention. I am unsure how long it has been, or if such a dilemma will ever harass me again, but I am emerging from my meditation now. I was, indeed, able to center my scatter it, then follow each piece to the ends of the Kath. Saba has lost a bit of his weight. His cheekbones are telltale to the duration of my conference with that deviant that is quietude. His face, in general, could do with some more color. Hopefully Jai returns soon. I'll let him sleep for now. I bathe myself in the strange light of the largest tree above me. Though, bizarre as it may seem, the flavor of this light is familiar. Miraculously and unconventionally, the root-guided rays of Sa find their path through this unorthodox forest's dense canopy and the soil above. I am fully rejuvenated. My body feels soft, but dense all at once, flexible yet sturdy, at rest, yet invigorated.
She will forever be with you now.
Jai jolts my senses, sneaking up on me once again. In this instance, however, I am not startled and do not leap in fright. Who? I ask.
The Kath. Irma. The cosmos.
She glares up, her vision seeing past the roof of trees, strung to the stars. Strung to Ara. Your stare has direction. Can you peer through the ground above? She chuckles.
I am an old alpha. Any wolf, rogue, retired, or active is threaded to our moons.
Jai's smile fades.
Have you lost your connection?
Her inquiry is investigative. Does she know of the Draken? Of course she does. She infiltrated my mind with my own command. But then she ought already be aware of my severance from Fasima. Tiamatu sheared my connections with the Draken of Ara. Jai's facial expression remains composed, but her aggravation is evident in her tightly clenched fists. She must not have peeked deep enough to witness all that I had stored, thus explaining that her ability is indeed but a sampler and not a gorging of the totality. I was certain back then that she knew all. For better or worse, this is not the case.
Meaning he removed your affinity with our moons. The Draken may only communicate with wolves or other Omani adept in their and they rarely do thus. But your contingency is pertinent.
N.
Tiamatu has been priming his arrival. He knows about you, and Fasima.
She warns. Wait, so you do know her?
I know of Fasima.
She quickly corrects me.
There is no mechanism that gives an accurate countdown to the seal's depletion, but there are omens. This is something I was certain of, and it is precisely why my reflected a state of unfounded calm when I discovered Tiamatu's hinted return, for in that moment I observed no signs depicting his coming to be soon. I falsely believed I had more time to train you. I do not. Be that as it may, we will continue until the first signal.
She directs her focus to Saba and informs him that he is free to stand, but not to speak. Saba struggles to his feet. He's as stiff as a corpse. For some reason, he removes his sandals. Ah, I see. With his bare soles making contact with the ground, he brings a mound of heavy soil up and around him, wrapping himself in the same manner he exhibited against Hakor. He inhales deeply, then moves the dirt in a twisting fashion, realigning and cracking his stale bones back in place whilst massaging his sore muscles. The dirt topples back down as now Saba walks renewed. The sight, let alone the sound of it all, sends shivers up my spine. For a moment it robbed my attention from the circumstance at hand. I turn back to Jai. What is this first signal? I inquire of her. Jai looks at me through a tint of disappointment. She believes these legends ought be common knowledge. I cannot blame her, for I carry a guilt for my lack of erudition. As a whole, how is it that our kind has forgotten and disregarded so much? And how had Jai come to learn and accept these as undisputed realities?
Tiamatu promised 2 signals to warn of his advent. In the perfect scenario, Parias' incarnate returns before the first of them and reseals him, prolonging his imprisonment for another 1,000 years. We are not living this perfect scenario. If Tiamatu has already begun interfering in our realm, then it is incontestable that the seal has already begun to weaken. The first signal is death upon the skies. All avian and creatures likewise blessed with flight will no longer navigate their natural domain. Tiamatu's foul essence will be the first of him to greet the outside world. His darkness will leak from his prison and evaporate into our atmosphere until eventually Sa is denied entry. The second signal, Broken World, will come 10 days after the first. However, it is already in the making at the time of the first. Moment by moment, Tiamatu's lingering element gradually slows Oma's natural motion, both land and sea. Come the 10th day, Oma will grind to a forced halt and begin slowly withering to death. Not long after her arrest will Tiamatu appear before us. This is how I remember the prophecies, but it has been many decades since I was acquainted with them. Thus, we must not take verbatim my words and falsely assume to our own detriment that we have even the little time prescribed in them.
As Jai concludes her ominous lecture, a thud sounds above us, then another. 3, 4, then 10s more. It resembles hail, but this is a region that ought not experience such weather. Saba, a hint for him to erode an opening. The three of us ascend to the surface and the thuds cease. Birds, by the flock, have been littered throughout and amongst the roots of the koth. Many of them are already dead from the impact. The rest flutter in futility, taking their final breaths. Saba points to the sky in the distance. A large flutora, many kalama away, spirals to its demise. Could that have been the one I was riding? It would be of no coincidence that it followed me, as I was the last to mount it, and it no longer has a living owner. We both turn to Jai for her testimony.
The first signal has been rung.
She bows her head and shakes it in a saddened frustration. We have a rather unfortunate relationship with warnings. What's been threatened tends to arrive immediately thereafter. Does this formidable adversary of ours toy with the strings of our fate, eavesdropping and plucking them in his twisted irony?